Hi there. I hope you're having a lovely day today. I am here for another live stream of conscientiousness and thoughtful intellectualisms with my friend Andy Proctor here. I found him and I've created a relationship with him through the app Anchor, which is the same place I found the last guy that two live streams ago now, Austin Ross. And Anchor has been an incredible place to facilitate really interesting relationships with people like myself. And Andy is obsessed with talking about how to become more happy, how to have a more happy life, which is what his station is called. And Andy, say hello and just tell us what you're up to in the creative world.
Hello. Thanks so much, James, for having me on. It's so great to be with you. And yeah, I started anchoring or broadcasting on Anchor, oh boy, like 2 months ago as an experiment. And I guess I got featured as one of the featured broadcasters from Anchor or whatever.
And they're great about that because I got featured too. We both got featured.
Yeah, that's right. You're a YouTuber on Anchor, right? And then mine's under the mindfulness and motivation section or something like that. Anyways, and I've been doing this for a little bit longer than that. I did it on Periscope, and I like you said, I love talking about the science of happiness and positive psychology. So yeah.
Fun fact about our relationship. Well, so two things. The first thing is we don't have too terribly much time here, so we won't be able to go for an hour and 45 minutes like I've been doing so far. So we're going to condense as much as possible. Second, me and Andy, actually, we figured out through this wonderful serendipity that we live very close to each other. So a couple of weeks ago, we met up and had a lovely brunch experience and had a fantastic conversation and realized that we have some chemistry together when it comes to talking about things. And the interesting thing about Andy is he spends a lot of time learning about the actual science of happiness, and he will actually cite studies and this sort of thing, which I think is very important in the world. We have a lot of people who feel a lot of ways but don't really have facts to back that up, and a lot of times they seem to be okay with that, which I find problematic. So today we're going to talk just a little bit about kind of finding harmony within the creative process and being able to have this balance of happiness within the creative process. Seems very glamorous and lots of good feelings and this sort of thing, but the real creative process can actually be quite anxiety inducing, among other things, and it can be very difficult to manage that, and then manage money, and then manage relationships, and all of the things, all of the wonderful things that come with life that you have to tend to as a human being. I am a person that if you put me on a pie chart, my brain would be like 93.2% creative focus, and the rest of it is all of the things that I should be taking care of in life that I am horrible at taking care of because of my personality type. And and so I've had to learn how to be more disciplined within that, and I've found where it can affect my relationships in certain senses. Andy, I'm curious, have you struggled with this in any way, and how have you sort of figured out how to overcome some of that, if so?
That's a good question.
Or are you just, you're like a robot, you're just perfect?
I'm perfect.
Okay,
next question.
Moving on.
Just checking. No, yeah, I think that's a really tough one, and especially for somebody who's creative. And I personally believe that everybody is creative. Everybody, to be human is to be creative. But I think there are certain people who, who crave that creativity a little bit more, and who kind of associated it more with their identity. I definitely have done that. I think you have as well.
Yeah.
And like, you're a photographer, right? And like that's a part of who you are. And and I think and a vlogger and a YouTuber, right? Like those are all very creator-esque
if you
pieces
took
of
those
identity.
things, if you took those pieces out of my life, I would melt into like a weird pudding.
There's definitely yeah. I would, that's interesting. That's a totally different conversation right there too. But to answer your question, I think it is important to. I've seen a lot of people be creative, or I've seen a lot of creators who do amazing things, and they are very creative. They have incredible ideas, and then and sometimes it takes them a long time to produce something. And then I've seen other creators who are extremely organized in their creativity, and they not that the purpose is necessarily to produce a lot, but they just seem to be much more prone to producing a lot of really good stuff. And the difference that I've seen between those two different types of creators is that one type of creator is I guess organized, and the other one isn't. And I don't know if that's the right word, organized. I think disciplined, maybe, like disciplined yeah. Creativity, if that makes sense.
That's what my live stream was about with Austin the other day, was how important it is to be disciplined in your creative pursuits and to practice. And specifically through his lens, he made an interesting point that that intentional practice and practicing on the things that you're weak at is really important. That you can
Absolutely.
have kind of uneventful or not as eventful as it could be practice and discipline.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And Angela Duckworth actually calls this, let's see here. Oh man, I'm like blanking out, but it's.
Well, let's start out with the fact that she has a fantastic last name.
Duckworth, right? Duckworth. Yeah, she wrote the book Grit, and
it's a good lawyer name.
Right?
Duckworth
yeah,
and
right.
Duckworth.
And Duckworth. Oh man, yeah. So she wrote Grit, which is the power of passion and perseverance, and she calls it something practice, and I'm totally blanking out. It's not disciplined practice; it's dedicated practice.
Is
the word
she
uses, or the phrase. And so, yeah, she says the people that engage in that dedicated practice, they are very much more likely to actually go through with something and accomplish more. So yeah, that's really interesting.
So before in preparing for this live stream, I couldn't help but think about the happiness chemicals or the happiness hormones, which happen to be dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And I cannot explain them in beautiful scientific glory, but what I'll say is that they all create different versions of what happiness is for us. So one may be more in charge of creating pleasure for us, while another one may be more in charge of creating our sense of belonging with other people around us. And that sort of thing. And some chemicals are very quick and immediate. For example, I think it's endorphins, which if you jump off of a cliff with a parachute attached to you, hopefully, if you've remembered, then that would quickly go from endorphins to, what is it, cortisol. Oh crap, I forgot my parachute. Well, I'm gonna die now. But that's very quick. It's immediate. It's endorphins. It's actually designed to mask pain, I believe, and it creates a lot of adrenaline within you. And it's almost like it's like a morphine. It's like an internal morphine, very powerful. And then you have, I think, serotonin, which takes a long time to build up. It takes momentum, which is something that I talk about a lot within the creative process. That's why I think the creative process actually mirrors happiness sometimes in a weird way. But I think what I want to get at is the fact that there are different versions. This blew my mind when I kind of figured this out. There are different versions of what happiness is for us as people.
Yeah.
And they're all valid, but some are the pleasure center things, the things that you get from achieving something very quickly. And then there's a happiness that comes with slow growth. And then there's a happiness with achieving something that you've spent months and years on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
There's a happiness that comes from holding something in your hand that you like. Let's say you sculpt ducks out of mahogany. I'm really good at coming up with these. I referenced macaroni sculptures last time. Ducks out of mahogany. For whatever reason, I visualized a duck in my hand made of wood. You spent 40 years growing the tree that will. Mahogany's a wood, right?
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So not only do you know about happiness, you know about tree woods. So mahogany, and for whatever reason you wanted the beak to be from a willow tree, right? You had to grow the trees, you had to chop the tree down. You go out there with your lumberjack thing. You had to grow a beard, obviously, because I mean, let's just be honest. You went out there with your with your axe, not a chainsaw, because chainsaws are for women, you know. With your real axe, and you go out there and you chop your tree down, and then you take it back to your wood shop, and then you have to sit down and you have to light some candles, really get into the mood. Take that little thing that you see the old people in those movies when they sit on the porch. Take that little thing and you just slowly carve away at it. And then after 150 years of working on this duck, you finally have a finished mahogany duck with a willow beak. And that is one of the chemicals. I forget which one I guess that would be. But point is, it's just a different happiness. You have different ways and forms of happiness that we experience as humans. And I think that I guess what the easiest one to come across would be the quick pleasure response happiness. This is the, you know, dopamine, this is the one that you will get from a lack of discipline, probably. And that to me is not a recipe for fulfillment and harmony within you, which is an interesting thing. So I think a lot of the harmony probably comes from, I don't know, from discipline and balance within your life, and the continual process of growth and feeling yourself take steps forward. It's probably part of it.
Absolutely. It's really interesting, all of that. And I think it's fascinating because there's this book called Hardwiring Happiness that he talks about these happy chemicals, right? Like the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and our brain uses those to basically learn what it should be doing more, and it just kind of obeys us, right? What we want, and it's trying to help us to have the best experience that we possibly can. That's what it's wired to do. And a lot of those combinations of experiences will add up to different amounts of each of those kind of chemical brews, I guess you could say, inside of our brain. And the thing is,
let me ask you this. Sorry to interrupt, but
you're fine. Yeah.
By doing more of those things that create one chemical, for example, does your brain then incentivize? Does your brain then say, "Hey, let's do more of that"?
For sure. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. And so that's why I was talking to somebody the other day about how addiction has such a I guess stigma around it, but we can really become addicted to almost any set of repeated behaviors that are rewarded. And I mean, you could become addicted to, I don't know, walking down the street if that's what or whatever, like some really normal,
There's a woman in your house, Andy.
There's a woman in my house. That's okay.
Is this your wife?
This is my wife, Stacy. Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's great to meet her her for a brief moment.
Yes, indeed. So we should do a little get together sometime with all of us. Anyways,
absolutely,
that'd be really fun. But yeah, this repetitive learning is what our brain is wired to do, right? If we teach it that we're going to, like, if we continue to be rewarded by opening up our phone and tapping on the blue F button or app, right? Facebook, like we can literally become addicted to that. And one of my friends was asking me the other day, like, am I addicted to Facebook because I can't even like get in the elevator and wait 30 seconds from floor 6 to floor 3 without like opening my phone and tapping the F? Like, and I just told him, yeah, you probably are.
Yeah, absolutely. I would define that as addiction. I mean, not chemical addiction, obviously, but it's a mental, it's a what's the word? You depend on it. It's a
dependency. I don't know what you want to call it.
That dependency. There's a word that's like right up under addiction that I can't think of right now. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So the cool thing though is that because we actually are the ones who do those actions, we can create that stuff. We can make happiness a habit. We can become, I guess we can train our brains to be more apt towards things that are multiplicative in our happiness. And not just, so just FYI, just a little kind of quick I don't know what you want to call it, but like side note here is that
prelude, side note.
Two kind of types of happiness, and there's the kind of pleasure happiness, right, that comes from those little things like we were talking about, and then there's the life satisfaction happiness, overall kind of life satisfaction, kind of meaning in life type of happiness, and those two are the kind of the ones that at least the researchers focus on, those two types of happiness. And so I think a lot of times when we look at the smiley faces and things like that, it's like, yeah, that's definitely still happiness. But when researching happiness, the one that I like to look at both. So
yeah. Now you were a second ago you were mentioning a book to me, and hold it up so that we can see what it is.
This is called Wired to Create. It's by Scott Barry Kaufman, and really cool guy who teaches at the University of Pennsylvania. And I believe it came from it's also by Carolyn, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Gregory, I don't know. Anyways, she wrote a post on Huffington Post a while back based off of Scott Kaufman's research, and it was like the 10 things that highly creative people do differently. So anyways, yeah. Really cool book.
Yeah, and so you were saying that you have just started to dig into it slightly, but that you had not made it too terribly far into the book, but you read off a couple of bullet points that they mentioned in there as bits of, I guess, creative harmony, or whatever we want to call it in this case. And one of them that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting was, I'm going to pick one because they're all interesting. Adversity, I find to be really intriguing because I have an interesting position on adversity. I think that adversity, if you can learn to thrive within the adversity, that is a very deep sense of happiness that you can come across. That to get yourself, like when we stay in a comfort zone as people, as creators, as photographers, as whatever, mahogany duck sculptors with willow beaks.
Exactly.
When we say a comfort zone, I feel like as humans, we sort of atrophy. We sort of, while our brains go, oh, this is nice, let's do more of this. We as humans sort of freak out over time, and we need that adversity to grow us. And through that growth is this just deep sense of satisfaction and sort of fulfillment.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely the fulfillment. And
most of my conversations with you are just like, hey, I feel like this is something that has to do with happiness. Is that right?
I love it. No, I love it. It's awesome. And yeah, I think kind of going back to what you were saying about like serotonin, like serotonin is kind of like this chemical. I mean, if we're just looking at it strictly from like an evolutionary standpoint, they found that this is like kind of what helps us to understand or make sense of our social position, as well as our ability to affect the world around us. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we've worked on something, if we've been like trying to make a difference on this duck for years, or carve this duck, or do a I don't know, huge project or whatever it is, and we've been working on this thing for forever, and then we finally see it finished. We see this creation that just has come to be, that we did. If we wouldn't have existed, it wouldn't have, if we weren't there, it wouldn't have existed. And it's beautiful. And then especially if we get a double kick of serotonin if we see that other people look at that creation and they say, wow, that is really neat. And we can see that it has affected not only us, but the other person. That's where serotonin is crazy powerful, because not only is it allowing us to see our effect, or we perceive that we have an effect on our social surroundings, but we also see that, wow, something that we did made a difference. And that's where, like, if we're talking about with serotonin, I think this is like kind of a side note, but it's, I think, really important too, because there's a lot of people out there who struggle with like
we should call this hangout Side Notes with Andy Proctor.
Side Notes with Andy Proctor. That's how my brain works, man.
That would be a great name for a book.
More like, Side Notes with Andy Proctor.
Dude, that's brilliant. We got it.
My brain's like,
I'll work on the design for the cover immediately after this. We're gonna make a book.
Okay. Sweet. I can't wait to see that in my email. Anyways, so yeah, but like serotonin, the people who struggle with depression, the one thing that they have found with that is that they have a hard time taking in serotonin, right? And keeping and managing their levels of serotonin. And so, SSRIs are serotonin, let's see here. Gosh, I'm totally blanking out, but serotonin something reuptake inhibitors, which makes it so that you basically can keep that serotonin within your little wiring of your brain for longer. And so that's what those medications do, is they help you to keep your serotonin levels a little bit higher. And so, not that this is like the cure to depression, but like, I think creativity is a huge factor in helping people to feel happier, but also helping people who feel completely unhappy to feel less unhappy, because it'll naturally increase their levels of serotonin. So anyways, so that's kind of a nerdy fact, but I think it's really important. And I honestly, I'd love to. So it's funny that we're having this this broadcast. It's really awesome. Because
they tend to do that. They tend to go that way. It's like, oh, I just had this thing I was thinking about today. I'm building my mahogany duck this morning. I just started.
Exactly. And this won't be published for a while, but I know that one of the things that I will do in life is write a book about creativity and happiness.
Yay.
Because I believe creativity is a huge factor with regards to our happiness. I could take it and break it apart into all the different factors of positive psychology, and every single one of them, there is creativity infused. So anyways,
I think we as humans, more than we tend to talk about for whatever strange reason, are inherently creative beings. I think that specifically, if you believe the way that I do, if you're a person of faith and you believe that God created us, he is creative, he has made us like him, and we are now creative. You could go that route with it, or you could just, you could also look at the fact that just by virtue of us as people, we are tool builders, we create things, we solve problems. And whether you're a photographer, or you're doing it in sort of a traditional sense, or if you are if you're solving financial problems, maybe you're a financial advisor, or if you're a doctor, being a doctor, the reason why anyone should go to a doctor is because of their judgment. Not so, I listened to a doctor, he says, don't confuse your Google search with my medical training. it's the years of experience growing judgment. That's a creative pursuit, right?
That's really interesting.
We're all creative beings. And I think that because of that, that is built into us as a means of finding, it's a part of finding meaning in this life, and it's a part of finding fulfillment in this life. And I think that what we like to do as humans is we will, I feel like sometimes I will try to substitute the fulfillment of the slow grind of creating with something that is maybe a bit more immediate and quicker and a bit more. It's hard because it's a balance, right? It's you need to have these things that are just pleasurable now, because I think that's really good for keeping you mentally sane and healthy too. I'll get to points where I go, man, I forget what it feels like to just kind of play, you know? That's so important too, but you can't have too much of the play. You also have to have the stuff that subjects you to serious adversity, right? That stuff, one without the other, is putting you off balance. It's I heard somebody describe harmony as the sort of the act. Maybe I made this up. Sometimes I make things up. I think I heard somebody say this. So the act of balancing all the plates in your life in harmony with each other. So picture yourself with 8 arms balancing all your plates in life. And if you're in a place where you're stable, that's sort of what harmony is. And that can be kind of distinct, I think, from balance in a sense, because balance is sort of like a this way and this way. Harmony is kind of just this general at peaceness. I don't know. I'm forming this as I go. Forgive me, but
sustainable.
I think that all of these things are important. I also think that discipline's important, and I also think that another thing in that book was imaginative play and daydreaming. I'm gonna read them all. Solitude, intuition, like following your gut is the way that I interpret that. Openness to new experiences, mindfulness. Holy crap! It's like my entire life is trying to be more mindful, which sometimes can go really wrong. And sensitivity as well. But I'm curious how. I think that another tremendous part of keeping yourself very healthy, with the few minutes I think we have left here, keeping yourself healthy is making sure that you keep your relationships in check too, keeping your relationships as part of the framework of your life, the blueprint of your life to building your happiness. See what I did there? And I think that specifically for me, when I've thrown money into the mix with the creative process, when you're in a place where you're not happy financially, that is a very fast highway. We have I-15 over here. It's a very fast I-15 to destroying your relationships if you're not careful, because it gets so stressful and so tense sometimes that you can't figure out how to turn your brain off. And you have to. I think we have to fight that. I was curious your thoughts on that.
That's a really good question, and Yeah, that's tough. It's like it's really hard to create when you have a financial gun to your head, if that makes sense. And I think creation is, I mean, there's been some really great creation that has been done through stress and that has been created because of adversity. For example, certain poems and songs, right? Why would you write like half the love songs out there are about breakups, and that's tough, you know? And maybe some of them are about like the fact that it's really hard to make money.
Well, there's this song that I really love that it's called Spirit Cold. I forget who sings it, but it is the most intellectual song I've ever heard in my life, and the entire song is about this guy seemingly wrestling with finding meaning in life, and how does he wake his spirit? How does he find fulfillment? How does he find fulfillment and and liveliness, but also kind of peace, that sort of thing. So
yeah. Well, and I think going on with that, there's two different types of passion that we briefly talked about before at one point, and Robert Vallerand has researched these two types of passion. One of them is like you're saying, this harmonious passion, right? We have this passion to create, and this passion to make the mahogany ducks, right?
and God knows I have a passion to make mahogany ducks with Willow Peaks.
No, but hey, I mean, my brother-in-law, he's carving these wooden spoons. They're pretty cool, almost as cool as ducks. But
oh yeah, close.
There's this harmonious passion is very good, and it's sustainable. It allows you to take the time you need to take care of your needs, both financially, emotionally, in your relationships, with your hygiene, all these things. It's harmonious. Whereas there's another type of passion he calls obsessive passion, and that it basically kind of takes over your life. It's not sustainable. It doesn't allow you to maintain positive relationships with others or even with yourself. And it starts to kind of break down your health. It starts to break down your finances. And that, I think, is difficult to move forward with that kind of passion. There's a lot of people who have that kind of passion. And I think everybody is passionate about something, but it may not be a harmonious passion. It may actually be obsessive. And if we can kind of get to the point where we are in that kind of the positive cycle of harmonious passion, then I think that's when you start to see really, like, you combine that with the disciplined creativity, and it's like, man, that's awesome. You start to create really, really amazing things very consistently, and it's sustainable because you can continue to do so. And you and I talked about this actually at the Sweet Lake Biscuits place, and
they had good biscuits.
I like that place a lot. And we kind of covered this thing. We had made this discovery right there in the backyard of the place, where
that's where so many discoveries are made, in the backyard of the place, man.
Right? Yeah.
Every time I'm in the backyard of the place, it's like a new era of life that I come across. That in the shower.
A good band name, right? The backyard of the place.
The backyard. We are the backyard of the place.
Oh, we're having some creativity here. This is what we came up with was that both happiness and creativity take a certain amount of activation energy.
Yes.
And once you get past that, then the more you create, the happier you are. And then if you're happy, you actually, and the research backs this up, people who are happier are more capable of creating and then people who create more are then more happy, and then it's just like this upward spiral.
It's a snowball.
Exactly, it's a snowball. Yeah. So happiness and creativity support each other, but to be happy or to create, it takes that initial effort to get to that point. So anyways, I really like that. I've talked about that with a few people since then, and I've been like, man, this is like the perfect, I don't know, maybe that's what I'll title my book, like the upward spiral of creativity and happiness.
Well, I remember we distinguished that the upward spiral from a downward spiral, which is a popular phrase for going into depression. The upward spiral was sort of the inverse of that, but it takes, like, if you think of yourself trying to drive a car up or down a spiral, you can if you don't tend to it, you can the car will just kind of roll down the spiral, hitting the walls as it goes. But if you go up the spiral, it takes you got to horsepower, you got to get up there. So it's this continual tending to, if you will, and momentum, like you said. And
yeah, absolutely.
And I think another thing that is important to remember in this process is that this has a lot to do with little baby steps, and just being very mindful and taking little steps to do this thing better that frustrates you so much, to do this thing a little bit more, and to and allow that momentum to grow through it's it's building a house brick by brick, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's
I like that. Yeah.
I think we're probably about out of time. What do you think?
Yeah, I do need to wrap it up in just about a minute.
Okay. So, all right. Well, we're gonna talk really fast. Well, awesome. I also think that it's a fantastic idea to make more creative friends. I think that will help you be healthier in your creative process as a whole. And this is a fantastic example of that. And Andy, I want to thank you for your time. And this was way too freaking short.
Oh, hey, well, we should do it again. We got
to do it again. More to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, man. Yeah. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure. And
as always.
Yes. And you guys can find him at More Happy Life on Anchor. I have the link to his Anchor below. I'm going to actually add the Instagram. I forgot to add the Instagram one.
Yep. Same thing on Instagram. It's perfect.
Very good.
Awesome.
And and you'll have plenty of happiness to be learned from Andy. He has a lot of fantastic thoughts to share.
I appreciate it, James. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on here. I always love talking to you, man. It's like the upward spiral starts to begin when we start talking. So
good, dude. We're gonna write a book and make mahogany ducks with willow beaks.
That's exactly right.
Bye, guys.
Hey, thanks so much. Take care.